right.
Got
Good
it.
morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, whatever time you're watching this. My name is Lori Krajewski, and I'd like to welcome you to Coffee With. Today, we are having coffee with a friend of mine, Julie Bielen. Julie is a blogger. She's a mom. She's a wife. She is just about to be an author very, very soon. I just know it, fingers crossed. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. She can holler at me if I'm not allowed to say this, but I have had the pleasure of a sneak peek into the book, and I cannot wait for it to be published for all of you to read. One of the reasons why I love Julie's writing is because she simultaneously always makes me laugh, cry, cry, laugh. I don't know which, it depends on which comes first, but she also makes me think. There's many times when I'll just sit there and just travel off into something because she makes me think, and I really like that. It's a gift. Her unique style is raw and real and funny and relatable and really relatable. I don't even know what else to say because as a working mom who's struggling just to figure out our stuff, what's not relatable, right? So with that, I would like to say, welcome, Julie.
I'm gonna cry now. Thanks, thanks for that. Little caught off guard. That was nicer than anything I could have said about myself. So thank you. Thank you for doing this with me. I'm excited.
Well, I'm excited. And I guess I should have mentioned that one of the reasons why I asked you to come, not just to share yourself and your writing and your experience, but particularly as it relates to health, your experience with Chiari malformation.
Yeah.
So with that, one of my first questions is, and if I've asked you this before, I apologize, but did you ever kind of feel like your whole life, did you feel like something wasn't quite right? Or was it at a certain point where you're like, something's not right?
Well, so the Chiari malformation is very elusive. What
Mm,
it is for anybody who doesn't know, because most people have never ever heard about what this is. It's a condition where your brain, like the back of your brain, goes down into your spinal column. There isn't enough space, so your cerebellum basically just is crowded out, goes into your spinal column, and that can cause all kinds of problems because your brain and your spine are, and all of the nerves are connected to all the parts of your body. So it can literally affect every organ, every system. And I mean, you could have one right now and not even know you have it because the symptoms don't always seem to correlate to any one thing. They're all over the map. So for me, I mean, I can look back now after I've been diagnosed and say, oh yeah, my motion sickness when I was a kid, that was probably Chiari related, or the dizziness I would get in college was probably related to that. A lot of random things that I would never have thought. Most of it didn't go to the doctor for, but they can be traced back to having a Chiari. So I have, so the way that they measure Chiari is that there's a level in your brain where your cerebellum's supposed to be, and anything below that level, more than 3 millimeters, I believe 3 millimeters is the standard. Anything is considered a Chiari. Mine's 18 millimeters. So it's pretty severely descent. But the weird thing about it also is that somebody could have a 5 millimeter Chiari and have crazy, incredible life-altering symptoms, and someone could have a 10 millimeter and have none. So really, how deep it is doesn't necessarily correspond to how severe your symptoms are. I just became one of those unfortunate people that their symptoms kept getting worse and worse and worse until I couldn't ignore it anymore, and I had to figure out what was going on. So.
And approximately what age was that?
Oh, no, I have to do math. So it was a long game for me to
Yeah.
get diagnosed. And
Right.
actually, so I was diagnosed in 2016. My symptoms started to really become a problem in 2006. So I went for about 10 years
Misdiagnosed,
misdiagnosed.
undiagnosed.
And
Yeah.
actually, I wouldn't mind mentioning a little bit about how that went, just because I know that a lot of some of the other things you've talked about has sort of been, I don't want to say where the medical community goes wrong, but where they don't get it right all the time. And they certainly didn't get it right with me. So
And I imagine a lot of other Chiari people feel the exact same way.
yes,
I
that's
mean,
the thing.
is it pretty common for this to be difficult to diagnose, I would imagine?
It is. Most people are diagnosed by accident. They get into a car crash or get a concussion. They have an MRI. Oh, we found the Chiari malformation. So it's the MRI, I believe, is one of the only ways that you can really truly diagnose it. And I didn't have mine till 2016. So and that's really common. I'm part of a Chiari Reddit. I don't know if you're familiar with Reddit or
Sure.
there's a really great Chiari community there that I wish I would have found many, many years ago. I just found in the last few years. Really supportive. But everyone who gets diagnosed goes there and they're like, I'm so confused. I had no idea. And now I don't know what to do. My doctors don't know what to do. Nobody had an answer for me. And they've been misdiagnosed for so long. There's also a lot of like other conditions that are sort of connected with this that I'm not real familiar with because I don't have any of them. So it's sort of a broad thing. I mean, for me, it started, what really started was with a cough. In 2006, I was living in Florida and I got a cough that just wouldn't go away. The first doctor I went to, he grabbed a brochure off his wall, says, this sounds like asthma. Gave me the brochure, and 2 minutes later, I had a prescription for Advair and a prescription for albuterol. And that was like, it brought me down the road of asthma, basically for the next 10 years.
Okay.
Changed doctors down there. They did pulmonary tests, actual pulmonary tests. Couldn't find any evidence of asthma, but they piggybacked off that original diagnosis.
Right.
More asthma medication. I moved back up here in 2010. The story is the same. First new doctor, new medication for asthma, no testing, nothing. Then 2014 is when the pain started. Now this is when, this is really when my life went just tanked. So I would be coughing, and I worked for a company in a very, very large building with hundreds of other people, really poor ventilation. And anytime one person was sick, you could just hear the whole floor, everybody's coughing and hacking, So I was sick all the time. Plus I've been on steroids now for, 6-7 years. And my immune system was just shredded.
Right.
So I was sick all the time, coughing. One day when I was coughing, I started to feel this pain in my head. It felt like someone just cracked me across the back of the head. And I was like, what is this? And that pain never went away. By that, I mean it, every time I would cough, that pain would come. And it got so bad that anytime I moved, if I laughed, if I sat up, if I lay down, if I went to the bathroom, if I turned my head, that pain would come. And it was like someone was taking a sledgehammer and just hitting me in the back of the skull. And it would radiate around to the front. And I would have to stop whatever I was doing when that would happen. I couldn't move. I had to wait until that pain and pressure went away, or it would just keep building. So this was happening to me constantly at this juncture. So 2014 is when that pain started. So I went and found a new doctor, said, I need help. This is what's going on. Help me. And I burst out crying. And she said, well, let's get you on an antidepressant. I think that will help. That was the only thing she did for me.
The ultimate in gaslighting. That's what I label that. The ultimate in
Yes.
gaslighting.
That's why I thought you'd appreciate this story, because it's like, there's so many, this is not unique to me. This is not unique to Chiari. This just happens. And yeah, I was crying because I was in pain and I needed help.
Well, and it had already been many years that things were not working.
Right. I'd been on this medication. So at this point, like I said, sick all the time. I literally have cough medicine. I keep cough medicine in my purse, a bottle all the time. I'd go through a couple bottles a week. Okay, to think of what that did to my body at this point, but it went on like that for a few years. I was so afraid, even when I wasn't sick, just the coughing that I was doing just from the Chiari that was still undiagnosed.
Right.
I would just suck down this cough medicine
Right.
all day long, every day, for
Wow.
a really, really crazy amount of time. So at the end of 2015, I lost my dad unexpectedly. Today's actually his birthday.
Happy birthday, Dad.
Would have been. Beginning of 2016, I was just like, I have to get this figured out. I can't be sad anymore. I can't be in pain. I mean, I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't doing anything. I was crumpling because I was in so much pain. I couldn't do anything. Found a new doctor and I said, I don't care what test you have to do. I need you to figure this out. Like, can you figure this out? And she said, sure, let's do a scope. Let's do more pulmonary testing. Let's get you to an asthma allergy specialist. And here I'm thinking, great, things are finally happening. But she wasn't paying attention to the pain. It was just the asthma.
The coughing.
Just the coughing. Still no evidence I had asthma. I'd go back every 6 weeks to this specialist who would try a different medication. None of it was working. And I'm going to get emotional talking about it. But I finally, it was April of 2016. I just had a complete and total breakdown.
Yeah.
Complete and total breakdown.
It's a long time to hold your breath. 10 years is a long time to hold your breath.
The pain was only a couple years, but it was so bad. My quality of life is non-existent. And I literally, I'm grateful for that moment because, I looked at my husband and I said, hun, I don't want this to freak you out, but if I knew that I had to live with this pain for the rest of my life,
yeah,
I would rather not be alive.
Yeah.
If I knew that there was no relief, that I would get no help, but this was just forever, I'm out. I'm just out.
Yeah.
And that was like the turning point moment for me because it couldn't get any worse. I knew something, I would do anything.
Yeah.
And that moment was kind of like my divergence away from traditional medicine and into something else. I immediately Googled alternative healing and I found Dr. Joe Dispenza, who is this, world-renowned, I don't even know what all of his qualifications are. He is amazing. He's a doctor and he helps people heal themselves through meditation and things like that. And I bought his book, You Are the Placebo.
Mm-hmm.
I started reading it, and the day that it was a really nice spring date was May 2nd, 2016. So a couple days after my whole breakdown, I was sitting on my deck and I was reading from You Are the Placebo, and I just felt like I needed to put it down. I didn't do a whole lot of praying. I'm not particularly religious, but I felt compelled to pray. And I just prayed, not for death exactly, but I prayed for that experience to die. I was just like, I'm done with this. I can't do this anymore. Whatever's next, I'm ready for it. Bring it on. But I have to be done. This experience has to die. I'm ready. And I sort of imagined myself as if I had died and if this was the end of this and that I was going to be reborn into something else. And the reason I'm telling this is because that's the day that basically after I had that prayer, I felt like I needed to go into my bedroom. So I did. I was also simultaneously reading Wayne Dyer's book, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. I opened it up to the page that I had been reading, and the words were, die while you're alive. Those are the very first words that I read.
Wow.
From the page that I had left off on before.
On that day.
On that day. And it just was like a lightning bolt went through my body. And it was like somebody was listening. Somebody somewhere, something was listening. They understood. And I wasn't alone, and I was going to get help. And I heard a voice as clear as day. This is so woo. I promise I'm not completely woo, but this is woo. You know, I hear this voice plain as day that says, throw away all your medicine. And I'm thinking, at this point, I'm on 6 different medications. And I'm thinking these medications are hard to get and they're expensive, and I've been on them for 10 years. I can't just throw them away. I am scared.
Right.
And I said, what if I just stopped taking them? And that was the last day, May 2nd, 2016 was the last day that I took any asthma medication. Within a couple of days, my breathing started to clear up.
Wow.
And within a couple of weeks, some days, because I would have these really intense coughing fits.
Mm-hmm.
Within a couple of weeks, those had basically cleared up. I'd have maybe 1 a day versus 10 a day.
Wow.
And that fall, that September, I went and saw a chiropractor, and he said, let's get you in for an MRI. And I said, great. And that's when they actually diagnosed the Chiari malformation. So really long road to the diagnosis. And some of it, like I said, went off the woo-woo deep end a bit, but it was just such a crazy long, just misdiagnosis, mishandling. And finally, this really simple diagnosis. This is the problem. This is all the problem right here. One little, maybe not so little thing.
Well, and bittersweet moment, right? Because you finally have an answer, but
now what do you do about it?
Yeah.
So this may have changed since 2016, but I don't think so, because from my time on the Reddit forum, it still sounds like decompression surgery is the only thing that's typically offered. And like I said, there's a lot of different illnesses and offshoots that are kind of related, that people with Chiari tend to have some of these other things too. So those might be treated differently. But for the Chiari malformation, what was offered to me at the time was a surgery where they insert a mesh into the back of your head, like they cut open your brain, your skull, or not your brain, but your skull, your dura, get right up in there with a mesh, and then they close you back up. And so it's, it's terrifying because they're cutting into your brain is exposed.
Yeah, like you said, get right on up there, and that's my brain.
Yeah. But I was in so much pain. I was like, yeah, sign me up. I'm ready. Let's do this. And I met with a neurosurgeon, and he didn't instill the most confident. He couldn't tell me how many surgeries like this he had done. He just said, oh, it's very common. And I'm like, not from what I'm reading, but okay. And then I was like, so if I do this, is my pain going to go away? And he's like, well, that's the thing. We don't really know. With this surgery, there's a chance you'll have some relief.
Oh my gosh.
I was like,
super promising. You're going to manipulate my brain and I might be better.
I might have some relief. Some. And then there's
oh my
always
gosh,
the
I can only imagine how many Chiari people are like, are you kidding me right now?
But that's the offer. Now, my symptoms might not look like anybody else's. We might, two people could have a Chiari 1 malformation and have completely different symptoms. Some people, dizziness, like they have really, really bad trouble walking, and spatial relations, that kind of stuff. Some can't drive a car because of that. Okay. Experience that sometimes, but that's not my main problem, Some people never have any pain. So the surgery might work better for other symptoms, but I think it's still, this is what we can do. It might help you, it might not. And that at that point wasn't good enough for me. So I never did the surgery. And, it's been many years now, many more than I realized looking back at, how long, but I would say 90 to 95% of the time right now, I am living Chiari free, Chiari symptom free. It's still there.
Right.
But the changes that I've made and the things I've done between then and now, most of the time I don't have any trouble. No coughing, no pain. The pain is the thing. I don't care if I coughed every day for the rest of my life at this point. But the pain is almost completely gone as most of the time. The one caveat to that is that if I do get a cold and the pressure is time to build up from consistent coughing for during that time, and then maybe a day or two after, I'll be a little more sensitive to the things that cause head pressure.
Wow.
Which is why we didn't have this chat last week, because I was just getting over a cold. But it goes away like this, whereas before it used to stay. So yeah.
So every Chiari person listening to this is going to say, how did you do that?
Well, I wish that there was like one magic bullet. I can be like, do this and you'll never have a problem again. The simple answer is I rewrote just about everything in my entire life, which is not what some people want to hear, because it's a lot of work, and it was, but it was all for the good. To get into that, what I would say if I were talking to somebody right now that's looking at me and they're desperate, what can I do? The very first thing I would say is take an inventory of your life. And I get you're in pain, you're suffering, or whatever you've got going on, but you have to know where you're starting from. Like, what things are you doing in your life that trigger your symptoms? Whatever that symptom is, where is that happening in your life? What is your job like? What is the environment at your job like? What is your home environment like, as far as like physically what is there, and then the people that are there, the stresses that are there. Where do you, and this is a page from your book, what do you do to feed your soul? That was the first thing you ever asked me when we met, and I was a little thrown off guard. But what do you do anything that is recreational that brings you joy, or if you completely lost all of that because you're so mired in your symptoms? What does your life look like? Because you really have to kind of know where you're starting from. And for me, I started addressing my triggers. I know that the pain is oftentimes triggered by a cough. Okay, so what kinds of things make me cough? If I have allergies, maybe the allergies might make me cough, and I know that I might need to take a Claritin or something like that in the summertime. That's not really been my problem, but that's just an example. One thing that I did that's really practical that anybody could do is I started detoxifying. Just smacked my microphone. I started detoxifying my home. Now we're not toxin free, but we used to light candles all the time, wax warmers, the plug-in, the wall plugins, all that stuff. But they were contributing to my coughing triggers. So we replaced almost all of that kind of stuff. We still have a few candles for random things, but they almost never get lit. I use essential oil diffusers, and I have no reaction to those whatsoever. We started trading out our cleaning products. We didn't do this in one fell swoop, but if we ran out of this thing, we would replace it with something better. I can hear everyone saying, but it's so expensive, but it's really not.
But it's really not. When you consider how many toxins are in just those two things that you've mentioned alone, I don't see, and that's where I love talking about stuff like this, because I don't think people realize, I really don't. I don't think people realize just our general everyday things we take for granted are so toxic. When you go down that aisle, you know the aisle I'm talking about.
Yeah, I don't enjoy going down anymore. I get a headache instantly because so much of that has been removed from.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking a Chiari headache, just a headache in general from the smells and the chemicals. It's like, oh my Gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
you walk into someone's house and they're burning a candle in every room, I can't stay
Yep.
long.
Nope. Nor do I want to. I mean, it's,
Right.
and I've even joked, when I'm outside walking on a path out in nature and I can smell you coming 5 minutes before I see you, your laundry detergent and your fabric softener is toxic.
Oh, that's another thing. Everything is like, and so I'm not buying in most cases, I'm not buying the most cleanest brands you can buy, but I'm getting the stuff without the dyes. I'm getting the stuff without,
Right.
like for detergents, no dyes, no perfumes. And I'm using a dryer ball that I put essential oil drops on in the dryer.
Right.
And these were all things that just naturally got replaced. And I don't miss any of it. I'm a perfume junkie, and that is the one thing that's been hard for me. But it's not so hard when if a smell makes me cough, I don't want to wear it.
Right.
Right. So identifying what in my home was going to make me cough and getting those things out. That was huge. Now it's like, that's not a factor. I don't just walk around my house coughing because of anything. It's just, that's, and anyone can do that. So that was a big thing for me. But you have to look at your work environment too. And that was a really big one. I did eventually start working from home at that job that I had mentioned before. And then now I'm not working at all. But the environment there, and a really just poor environment for health.
Yeah.
And, I know it's not feasible for everyone to leave their jobs, but talk about how to change that environment. Can you see and this has changed a lot since COVID, can you see about working from home?
Right.
And even just that might help with stress levels.
Right.
Stress level, that was a huge thing. So stress, that's another really big thing.
And at home, you can control your environment. In older buildings with hundreds of people, not only do you have dust and probably a lot of mold, but now you've got, other people's perfumes and other people's shampoos and other people's laundry detergent and all of the things that are in our environment. And like you said, if it is an option to work at home, you can control your environment at home. You can get air filters. You can take the steps that you mentioned to eliminate the things that are within your control to eliminate. And there's apps that you can download that will help you do this. Super simple things that we can do that can really make a big impact.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I didn't do any of this overnight, but, trading things out as they go. It was so natural. And it really isn't any more expensive to buy the stuff without the colors in it, or to buy the stuff without the perfumes in it. Even if you're not going, full vegan with whatever you're buying, you can still do better than what you were doing before.
Right.
And that has made a big difference because I'm not coughing at home. And I left.
And you're also not adding toxins to your liver.
That too, right. Then my toxic load is going down, and my liver. My toxic load's already very high from a decade of steroid medication that I took, and from sucking down all that cough syrup. Literal cough syrup. I shudder to think what it looks like in there, but it's making a difference now. All these things that I'm doing, I feel better now than I did anywhere there. I mean, I feel better and better every day. The more that I do, and the more that I detox and, that kind of thing, the better I feel. So, that's been huge.
So you mentioned Joe Dispenza, you've mentioned Wayne Dyer, you've mentioned some detox protocols. What are some of the other things that you've done, or any trips you might have taken, or any other things that, one of the things that I love about you is that you're all in. You have left the country to try to heal your body. I mean, you are dedicated. And, if you are not all in to save your life, what's the point, right? So I
Yeah.
love that you are all in, and even the treatment that you started last fall, you are all in. The treatments that I've offered you, you're all in. You are dedicated, and that's what it takes. As much as, like we said in the beginning was, yeah, some of this might be a little intimidating to take stock of your life and see where you can make changes. But if you want to change your life, you got to change your life.
Right. And you have to. And that's why I do share some of this, like on my blog, I'll write about this, or within the Reddit forum when there's someone really hopeless. It's like, please, you do not have to be so hopeless, but it is going to take some time.
Yes.
And you're right. That day when I started looking up natural health, it's just a simple Google search, but I had broken that day, and the dominoes started falling after that. And there is no other way for me. I made it my job to figure out what this is.
Yeah.
Not just like, how do I get rid of it, but like, why do I have it?
Yeah.
So that's so important, because when you think about what a Chiari is, it's a blockage in your brain. It's a blockage for any kind of life force or anything to flow through your body. It gets stuck right there. Why do I have that?
Yes.
Like on a spiritual level, on an emotional level, what does that mean? Where am I blocked? And when I really started to do the work, I mean, when I talk about work, I've done online courses. I've done, like you said, I went to South America on a spiritual retreat because I wanted to heal the Chiari. And the funny thing is every time I do a retreat, every time I do a meditation, every time I take one of these big leaps, the Chiari is never the first thing to come up. It is like the last thing to come up. It is the afterthought. I am there. I went to South America for the Chiari, and I was there a week before I even thought about it.
Wow.
Like, it's everything else that's junked up, that's stuck there. The Chiari is not the problem. It's, how am I living, and how am I not living the way that I should be living? And how have I gotten off track from anything that brings me joy, that gives me purpose? Where am I stuck emotionally in my relationships? And we've talked about this before, and I have there's something I realized at one point, that I was basically identifying as a sick person. My husband one day, he got a cold. He never gets sick, and he got a cold one day, and he was kind of hemming and hawing about it. And I'm just like, looked at him and I'm like, you're not sick. Like, you don't know what sick is. Nobody does sick like I do sick. I didn't say this to him, but in my mind, I'm just like, what's the matter with you? You're not sick. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have owned sickness. I own this. With every fiber of my being, I own being sick. I wake up in the morning and I think about where the pain's going to come from, how everything that I'm going to do is going to create that pain. How am I going to stop it? How am I going to, what can I do to alleviate it? And even just thinking about changing jobs. Well, I can't do this because I can't be that active, because that might cause head pain. So I can't do this. It tied back to everything. I mean, and so much so that I couldn't even think about progressing my marriage, because I couldn't think about having a kid, because I couldn't take care of myself. I was too sick. And legitimately I was for a long time, but I owned being sick.
And it was all consuming.
It was all consuming. And I call it untethering, because it was kind of like, if you're a tapestry and you're all woven together, and sickness is woven into all the fibers of your personal being or your personal tapestry, I had to go in and like literally,
I love that,
untether every single one and remove it. Any time that the sickness came up, or any time that I was using the Chiari as an excuse, that's another thing.
Yes.
When you're doing your inventory, make a little section about what you get from the illness.
Yes.
Because as terrible as it is, you get something from it. I got out of things.
Yes.
I didn't have to do things that I didn't want to do because I was in pain.
Yes.
I didn't have to try to be a writer and fail because I was in too much pain. I didn't have to try to be a mother and fail because I was in too much pain. I didn't have to try to be a good wife or partner or show up for anyone in my family or go to Thanksgiving dinner because I'm in too much pain.
Yes.
So
I love your honesty, because I have the exact same experience. When illness was consuming my life, someone asked me, well, how do you benefit from your illness? And I got really angry. I was like, are you nuts? I do not benefit from being sick. This sucks. There's no way that I benefit from how from being sick all the time.
yeah.
And she said, anytime somebody gets frustrated with my questions, there's definitely something there to chew on. And it took me years to really see how illness is a gift.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, all of the ways that we do benefit from it, how it does get us out of things that we don't want to do. And it's never something we would intentionally do. This is unconscious programming and unconscious thought here. But if we can be brutally honest with ourselves, if we can be raw and real with ourselves and our own pen and our own paper that nobody ever has to see, we can learn a whole lot about ourselves and how, like you said, so many people don't even know how much energy and how much time is invested in that intertwined tapestry. I love how you put that intertwined tapestry of illness. And when you introduced me to Wayne Dyer's book, Wishes Fulfilled, and he talks about, he talks about so much in that book, but a lot of it really is, and I knew this, but he just had a way of putting together so many things that I had learned over the years in one book.
Yeah, that's still like my favorite.
Yeah, it was put together in such a beautiful way of how energy doesn't care where it goes wherever we put it. So if we're putting all of our energy into illness, we're going to get illness. We are going to get what we gave. We gave all of that energy to illness, and we're going to get it. And boy, did I do that. I gave all of my attention and all of my energy to illness. Like you said, why do I have this? How did it start? And how do I unravel this? That's really time consuming. And I know people are going to watch this going, well, yeah, how do you do that? Because how do you fix something if you don't spend energy on it, right? How do you fix something if you don't pay attention to it? I'm saying when it becomes all consuming and when we devote all our time and energy to it and our whole mind is full of energy, that's where our life is going to go. So when we can start to make those shifts and start to open our mind to possibilities and start to retrain our mind to wellness and unraveling and undoing, now the door is open. Now we can breathe a little bit, and now we can explore possibilities of a different way. So, that said, what were some of your different ways that you started unraveling from that?
Well, that's the thing. Like, if someone's going to say it's a lot of work, well, it is, but it's also a lot of work being sick. It's a lot of work getting well, but it's a lot of work staying sick. I put all of my energy on being sick, and that's exactly what you said. And that's what I kept getting more of. But it's hard when you're in that place where you're in so much pain. It's hard to think that there could ever be anything else.
Yes, it's hard. It is really, really hard, but it's also the most important work you'll ever do.
I know. Well, that's why I mean, I can't tell you how many hours I spent with doing Joe Dispenza meditations, trying to, even if I couldn't get out of the illness mindset, I could spend some time doing a meditation where I was just thinking about being healed. I wasn't thinking about the pain. I was just thinking about being, because in those moments, I couldn't deny that I was in pain. Even now, if I get a cold, I'm still in pain.
Right.
But it doesn't have to be the thing that rules my life from here on out, like it did. And it did.
Right.
So shifting that focus, like intercepting even thought by thought, like if I'm having a thought about, like when I was thinking about changing jobs, and I was really limiting myself because I didn't want to do something too active because I didn't think physically I could capably do it. And I was like, you know what? I have to stop thinking about it like that. I have to stop putting the Chiari first. What do I
Yes.
want to do?
Yes.
What do I want to do? And how can I do that? And stop letting that be the driver, you know, kind of take back that control, take back that power. So it was a thought by thought kind of thing. It was a lot of meditation, and it was a lot of like journaling and asking myself those questions. There's a lot of really, Joe Dispenza has some really good leading questions in some of his books that can help you kind of rewrite the way that you think about yourself. And they're not all about like healing physical ailments, but even just like mental, which, I mean, realistically, you're sick in the head and the heart before you're sick in the body.
Yes.
So
It all starts in
want
the
to
head,
start
right?
there. People don't, they want to start, how do I fix this pain in my leg? Well, how do you feel about your mom? I don't know. Let's talk about that, you know, like where are you unhappy? Where do you feel that anger pinging? It might have something to do with that, you know, like there's so much out there. And actually I just read twice, You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay, because in it, she goes through this whole, how every body part and every illness can be traced back to a thought pattern. Simple, you're afraid of this. Oh God, really? That's it? And if you can wrap your brain around that, you know, this fear or this lack of self-worth and all of this, how that's tied to your physical being, I feel like I'm getting way off track here. But that's, you know, so much of what I've done is, how do I see myself? Where am I in the world? And how do I stop letting the Chiari take the lead?
Yes.
Like if I still, every now and then I still get a thought like, oh, I can't become a runner because that's going to hurt my head. And I'm just like, wait a second, do I really believe that? Or am I just making an excuse to not go running? Like what's really going on here? And if I really want to run, which I don't, but if I did, you know, like you have to see where that illness is fitting in. That's why I think it's important to look at what you're getting out of it, because that's probably the hardest thing to look at, is that shows you your fears. I was afraid of failing at all of these things that I should have been doing as a 30-some-year-old woman. I should have been having babies and writing books and doing these things that I technically wanted to do, but I was so afraid that I was going to fail. I didn't have to try.
Yeah.
I didn't have to try to do better.
Yeah.
And the Chiari was the stopper in place. No, you can't do those things because you're sick.
Yeah.
Well, I had to completely break from that whole mindset. And you can use that with anything, you know, the untethering concept, anything. It doesn't just apply to this, but like any kind of thought you're trying to get rid of, if you're aware of it, it can start, and start cropping up everywhere. But focusing on the healing, the being healed, the health part of it, not the illness. Eventually that's what you're going to get more of.
And it is important to remember that it is a gradual process. It's very rare to have this happen overnight. And when it does happen overnight, it can be a massive shock to the system.
Yeah.
People can literally have these overnight experiences, and there's some psychosis there. We don't want this stuff to happen overnight. We want it to be a gradual process, because that's the stuff that sticks.
Yeah.
You know, and I often relate it to, just like you learn a bad habit, you can unlearn those bad habits, and you can create positive building blocks and stepping stones toward a future that you do want, and a now that you do want to experience and that you do want to live.
Yeah. Well, when I say that I've literally rewritten my life, I have. I changed jobs from the bad environment to a much better environment. One with hundreds of people to one with like 2 people. you know,
Yes.
in something that I was actually interested in. And then I left that because I had, you know, then I got so well that I could have a kid, and I had my son, and I've been staying home with him ever since. And since I've had my son, I've never written more in my life. You know, I started a blog in 2018 to really kind of gather all of these kind of things that I'd been thinking and trying to figure out for all these years, a place to gather it all. And it's kind of morphed and grown with me over the years. But you know, now I'm writing constantly, and that wasn't a reality for me for a long time. And just, I mean, and like I said, changing those simple things in my environment in my home was a big, you know, a big thing. I'm gonna pop over to my notes here really quick, just because I wanted to make sure that I don't forget anything. Oh, I did forget something really big.
Oh, tell me.
Something I did something that is kind of controversial for someone with a Chiari. You're not recommended to do any kind of chiropractic, any kind of thing like that. And for the most part, I agree. I won't let any chiropractor touch my neck in the typical adjustment way. But I did something called decompression therapy. And this, if there was one single physical thing that I did to help my body with the Chiari, it was this. And I don't say this as someone who can recommend that, you know, everyone go out and do this. However, I will say that it helped me greatly. I worked with a chiropractor who is familiar with my condition and wanted to see if this type of therapy would be helpful. What it is, you lay down on a table, and there's a device that's attached to your neck, and it's weighted. And over the course of like 20-25 minutes, it will pull and stretch your neck. You're laying down, so it pulls it straight up, or, you know,
Yeah.
it pulls it in the right direction. And I did this in 2019, and I was still having a fair amount of, not regular pain, but just a fair amount of stuff that would get built up, especially if I got sick, and it would stay a little longer. I started doing this, and it was like within a couple of treatments, the pain was completely gone. And I'd never had that happen before.
Wow.
In 5 years. And I went for between 20 and 25 sessions, I think I did. And now I have my own personal device that I can use here at home. It's not typically recommended, just because they don't, I think doctors more or less don't know what will happen.
Right.
Especially if you have other complications. I don't have any of those other, my Chiari is fairly straightforward. You know, I don't have a lot of the outerlying issues. So that was really, I try to tell people about this all the time, because it was a game changer for me.
Wow.
A huge, you know, a huge thing. And so I did that, and for the pain, I will say it helped with the pain. And it really seems to have done something to the point where I almost never have to do the decompression here at home. Like, it's just in between, if I were to get a cold or something, in between all of the times where I'm healthy, which that's another thing, is how do I get my body healthier so I don't keep getting colds, because that's a trigger. Then in between all these times, I don't have any pain. And that really, really, really became apparent after the decompression therapy, not surgery, therapy.
Right.
So that was something I definitely like to mention. That was probably the single biggest physical thing I did to my body, the only physical thing I did to my body.
Well, you did other things like herbal remedies and detox protocols that did support your physical body. But I think you mean as far as like a treatment or a surgery or a procedure.
Because I, for non-Chiari related reasons, I have been doing a lot of herbal remedies, like you said, and detoxification and all of that kind of thing. Chiari related, the decompression was the only real physical thing that was done to my body.
Right.
But I do think that the better I feel in my body, the healthier that I get, the less those symptoms are going to be an issue. When I started to get the really bad symptoms, when the head pain really started, I'm still overweight, but had just gained a whole bunch of weight.
Okay.
I was on all that medication, so that probably didn't help.
Well, especially the prednisone, right?
I didn't actually have prednisone. I was on like Dulera and Advair and all these. I can't even remember. I was on Dulera for a very long time, but it was steroids for 10 years.
But still steroids, exactly.
Yeah. But I was drinking beer a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, daily.
Yeah.
I mean, being realistic, I was drinking beer daily.
Well, weren't you also in college?
No, this was after
you were
college.
out of college.
This was
Okay.
all post-college. I was just foolish. I loved beer and I was drinking
just
beer
having
every
fun.
day. That's just what I did. But now I
Well,
never
and
drink beer
I think we
because
should throw in the caveat there that we are from Wisconsin, and
we
we do like
okay.
not just beer, but we are very all about the craft beer.
Yeah.
And craft beer festivals. And
I wasn't sitting around drinking Miller Lite every night. It was like a craft beer, like you said. But beer was a coughing trigger. I almost never drink beer anymore.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Occasionally.
So you found a trigger.
Times, but yeah, that was a trigger. Consequently, wine ended up not being a trigger. It ended up helping me. So I started drinking more wine, and that's a story for a different day. Why detoxification is necessary. But I like I said, I was working at that job that I didn't really like in that really bad environment. I wasn't taking care of myself at all. I didn't care about what I ate. At the time, I don't even think vegetables were part of my diet. I mean, I've been doing a lot of changed everything.
Yeah.
So, and so much of it has to do with not the physical, but the inner work. And most recently, I did something called QHHT, quantum healing hypnosis technique, which is super fun and scary. And I never have done anything like that before in all the things that I've done. But that if somebody wants to get to the root of what is going on with themselves, I would highly recommend doing this. However, it is not for the faint of heart. And it's probably not the first thing you should do.
No, I would. I couldn't agree more with that statement. It is not for the faint of heart. It can be very intense, and it's probably not step one.
It is not step one. It's probably step 10 or 20. For me, it was like step 45. And the effects are still being felt. And I did it a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
But it's essentially along the lines of like I was talking about Louise Hay with the different parts of your body signaling, the different things that are different illnesses are triggered by different fears and different parts of your body, or different thought patterns and things. Well, it kind of goes right along that road, where if you have a pain in your leg, there's a specific belief pattern that you're probably dealing with that you need to release or whatever. So you go in with a practitioner and you have a list of your health maladies. And for me, of course, the Chiari is number one. And then also just a list of questions, because you're going into a hypnotic state for all intents and purposes. You can ask yourself things that you want to know. Yep. And these help you get to the root of why things are the way they are. As per always, a Chiari was not the first thing that came up. It came up much later. And when it did, I started laughing, because what came to me was that this is, and I'd already kind of had an inkling about this anyways, but that the Chiari is a gift.
Yes.
And the gift is, it's my compass.
Yeah.
And
it's
not
your barometer.
And I always thought it was my barometer. And when I was in there, it was very specific that it was a compass. And I was like, okay, they're very similar. But what I got was that it was, not only is that it brought me down a completely different path than I would have been.
Mm-hmm.
Down, meeting different people, going different places, experiencing different things completely other than what I would have been doing. But also that, like, if I'm not living well, it'll tell me.
Yes.
If I stop taking care of myself for too long,
Yes.
if I put my physical body, my emotional body, any of that stuff on the back burner, you can bet something's going to happen. And those nudges were small when I was younger, and until they were a sledgehammer.
Yes. Yes.
And I couldn't ignore it anymore. So I would recommend a quantum healing hypnosis technique. And I really liked the practitioner that I worked with. For anyone in the Green Bay, Wisconsin area, he's out of De Pere. And it was just, it was good.
Does he see people from a distance too, or does he just prefer to see in-house?
In his house, I believe it's all in-house, but he does have like YouTube meditations and things that are also very helpful, which I would recommend people start with anyways.
I know, right? Because it's just not something that you want to dive into if you, like we said, if you're just starting out, that can be really intense. It's not step one.
No, I mean, I was there. I got to his place at 9 a.m. I left at 1:45. I was there that long, and most of it was doing the hypnosis. And whew,
yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot.
But it's an avenue, it's an avenue that helps you when you really want to learn about yourself and you just can't quite get there, and not just learn, but release those things.
Yeah.
You start releasing as soon as you decide you're going to do this. Like, the releasing process starts, and the releasing process continues after. So it's intense, but it's really, really worth it.
Yeah. And it's, so I don't mean to scare people away from doing it, because I actually know a friend's son who did this. I think he was 9 or 10 or something.
Yeah, you can do it.
So, it's not necessarily too intense for anybody to do. It's just that it can be a lot. However, that said, it can also be an all ages thing.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that he is willing to work with children, and he has worked with children, because now they don't have to establish so many years of these unhealthy belief systems and unhealthy patterns, and they get into their 30s and 40s and 50s and they're all a mess, right?
Yeah.
I love that. I met the little guy that I'm talking about, and he has not been the same since.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and here's the thing, like, you can go as deep or as shallow as you want. You don't have to jump into the deep end of the pool.
Yeah.
I mean, and he's asking the whole time, because I was in physical pain, not Chiari pain, but I was in physical pain and like very sick, and my whole body was like shifting. Everything was, I got a really bad headache that started in my head and just trailed down my face, and it collected right here.
Wow.
And it was like this migraine that I just couldn't even.
Wow.
It was very hard at the end, because I was just like, is this over? But no, I just want to keep going. And I'm like, yeah, let's just do this.
And see there again, you dive in and you're all in. A lot of people would have bailed and probably, pulled the plug and said, nope, I'm out. I'm not doing this. And you go ahead and go. And that's, like I said, that's one of the reasons why I love your commitment to yourself and to your healing journey. You didn't really sell QHHT very well to people who are like afraid of head pains and migraines.
No. So,
but I know what you're saying. It can, like you said, it can really release on a physical level a lot of our stored up beliefs, a lot of our old patterns, a lot of old. And sometimes when that comes out of our energy field, that can feel uncomfortable. We can feel aches, we can feel pains, we can feel old injuries. That's
Mhm.
something that I've done. When I was a kid, I fell ice skating and smashed my hip. And during one of my sessions many, many years ago, I experienced that hip pain like it was day one.
Mhm.
And for the next couple of days, I was actually limping because my hip was going through a healing that I didn't have the opportunity to have at that time. At
Yeah.
that time, it really was, you're fine, suck it up, keep going, you're fine, don't be
Mhm.
such a baby. And it left an emotional mark that I didn't feel supported and that I
Yeah.
wasn't nurtured. And all of the things, there's so many
Mhm.
times as a kid, we encourage our kids to just get over it.
Yeah.
Some
And then
dirt,
it
rub some
then
dirt
it
in it, you'll
follows
be
up.
fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I would encourage anyone to do it. I just wouldn't do it as the first thing you do. You need to know a little bit more about what you're looking for.
Yeah,
The questions that I went in with now would be completely different if I did this 10 years ago. Now my questions, I don't want to say they're advanced, but I'm not thinking about a lot of the same junk that I was thinking about 10 years ago. So I worked through a lot of that. And but he was telling me, he's like, some people come in and they want to do a session and they're worried about their dog that's going to surgery. Others, we go back to their childhood in like war torn cities and things. He's like, so everybody's completely different.
wow,
Everybody is going there with a different need, and it doesn't have to be something major. For me, there was a lot of major stuff that had to be uncovered, and that you know so that I can be a better person. And it ended up having, when I went to see him, it was for the Chiari, just because I'm still stuck on that. I've got to still heal this thing, even though it doesn't bother me most of the time. But I'm so intrigued by how we can heal ourselves that I keep kind of using it as, I'm gonna go watch this guy present this thing about something called quantum healing. That sounds awesome. I want to heal. And that's almost kind of like a problem. Like, I need something to heal, so I better go, you know what I mean? Like, I don't need to keep this, but at the same time, I need something to heal. And but it's very good. And I think I feel like
well, and to
everybody
your
should do it.
credit, um, the more healing we do, the more that we can offer others, right? The better
Mhm.
moms we can be, the better wives we can be, the better friends that we can be, the better we can be to serve others.
Yeah.
And that's my opinion anyway, is the more that I can heal, the more that I can sustain my own peace and my own frequency and my own vibration. And the more that I can do that, the more I leave room for everybody else to do that. I was
Yeah.
having a conversation with a woman the other day, and she was basically saying, I didn't want to be a social worker anymore because I can't save the world. The only thing I can do is my own work. And if everybody could just do their own work,
Mhm.
we would have a much different world.
Yeah.
So are you addicted to healing now? Oh, well, I mean,
So
oh
it's
darn, you're going to raise your
it's
vibration and you're going to heal some more.
it's just funny because I keep seeking these things out and getting interested as how it relates to the Chiari, because it's still there.
Right.
Um, but it's such a non-issue in my life that I think maybe now is a time where I can just, even after this conversation, just be like, okay, I don't need to do any more of these seminars to try to figure this out. What's the next thing? Like, I'm ready for the next jump into something else. Which is kind of a cool thing to realize as we're talking about it, that I might be a healing junkie, like a little bit. But it's better than the way that it used to be. Like, it's great because I wouldn't be having this conversation with you if
Right.
it weren't for this. And I if I can help even one person, and I feel like I haven't made my point very clear. I feel like I've just been all over the place because I'm so
No, oh
excited
my
about
gosh.
how I feel now. But like, I want someone else, whether it's with a Chiari, particularly with a Chiari, because there's so much desperation and so much that's not known. Your doctors
Right.
don't know what to tell you. Your surgeon doesn't know what to tell you. They don't have
Right.
an answer for you other than, this is what we can do. It might help you, it might not. Like, but that's not all there is. and nobody's given any other information. Nobody's given any other help. And I would like to change that. I would like that conversation to change. And I know I'm not the only one who can have that, but it's a place to start.
Absolutely.
And if
Absolutely.
you saw me in 2016 to now, of what my life looks like and how I feel in it, unrecognizable. It's not the same. So
I think we met in 17, and I couldn't agree with that more.
yeah. Was it 17? I was trying to think of that the other day when it was. I mean, no, when it was. I didn't know
It was
year.
at a wedding.
It was,
yeah.
So we asked someone, that.
So I'd have to check and see what their
we could ask
them
when they got married, and then we would know.
Yep.
But I think you're right. Yeah, I think it must have been 17.
Yeah, I think it was. And it's true, even just one thing that you did to help you heal kind of removes you from who you used to be. And then you do another, and it does remove you from who you used to be. I mean, that was 7 years ago now that you started this journey. There's no way you're the same person.
No.
And you're almost published.
Fingers crossed on that.
Well, we'll cross our toes too, but so what? It's going to happen. I know it's going to happen.
I know. And that's one of the things that is, it's just another one of those things that comes up that you have to get out of your own way for. And you have to allow healing, just like you have to allow anything else. And as long as you're sick, or it's, in this case, I'll worried that I'll never get published or whatever, then of course I'll never get published and I'll be sick forever. That's not the way that I want to live. That's not the reality.
Right. And to me, it's a testament to some of the healing work that you did, because would you have been able to really write a book with all of that pain and with all of that coughing and with all, do you know what I mean?
No, and I wasn't.
To me, and this really isn't any of my business, but to me, that book is your reward for all of your hard work. Is all of the ways that way. That's filled your life.
Yeah.
It's a celebration of your healing and the next chapters of your, the next couple of decades.
Yeah, because I am not sitting around thinking about the pain every day. In fact, I don't think about it. I haven't.
And you're not coughing. And you don't have cough syrup everywhere you go. And
I'm getting over my cold still, so I have.
Well, that's a little different, right?
I was like, that's great. Right in the middle of my Chiari interview, I was like, oh, but I am getting over a cold, so that's. But you know what? I didn't have any pain either, so.
I mean, we've been talking for almost an hour, so.
I know. I never talk this much. My kids doesn't listen to me for this long, so yeah. I mean, I just want people to know what's possible. I just want there to be a conversation, and I want to participate in it. And
so if people are watching this and they want to reach out to you, are you open and willing and inviting others to, to reach out, like you said, to have the conversations, to maybe and show them where this Reddit group is, where they might be able to find some more support and, kind of, all the things?
100%. So I'm not super active on social media, but I am there. I do have, so for my blog, My Inner Culture, I do have a Facebook page for it. That's probably the best way, because I probably check that more than my personal. I'm just not on it very much, but that is a very easy way to connect with me. And yeah, I would love to talk about it with anybody who wants to talk about it. So
wonderful. Yeah. So for those who are interested and want to reach out to Julie, I will get all of her links from her, and I will most definitely post them with this interview. So you'll be able to really easily reach out and find her and pick her brain a little bit more, and find some of the groups that she might be involved in where you can find more support. And so to share that information with people as well,
I'm sorry, I
feel free
lost
to
that
reach out
last
to
little bit.
me.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good.
Yep. So, and then feel free to reach out to me if there's something else that you would like to bring awareness to. If you've got a subject that you would like to talk more about and want to share with other people, feel free to reach out to me as well. And I thank you, Julie, for meeting me for coffee today.
Thank you for having me. It was awesome. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye for now, everybody. Join us next time.